Thank you. Let me thank Senator Kramer for his interest in carbon border work, and I look forward to making more progress in that area. Dr. Rajitsky, we have a number of things on the horizon. The first is the European Union's CBAM, Carbon Border Adjustment Mechanism, which will begin counting carbon emissions shortly and begin tariffing carbon emissions in 2026. The United Kingdom, it has just been reported, will be joining the EU on a similar schedule with a similar carbon border tariff to neutralize any tariff obligations between the UK and the European Union. What effect will that have on decarbonizing America's industrial sector?
I thought I was meeting somebody at 11. Yeah.
Thank you, Senator Whitehouse, for the question, and would love to build on my response to Senator Kramer's question as well. That yes, these new CBAM policies that the EU and the UK are planning to put in place are already in motion. Will certainly have an impact globally and U.S. manufacturing as well. As we've already been discussing, U.S. manufacturers are often already much more carbon efficient, energy efficient than manufacturers in other countries. And so they stand to gain actually from being able to access more of these European and UK markets because they have a carbon advantage to some of the other countries that are importing into those places. And if we couple that with further investments in decarbonization in our domestic industry, then that carbon advantage is just going to keep growing and growing and creating, even more opportunity to take that global market share. And as other countries beyond the European continent are thinking about border adjustments as well, then that just furthers the opportunity even more.
The economic experts who advised the EU in the CBAM note that there will be some economic headwinds for America by virtue of having to pay a carbon tariff to the EU because we are not as because we are more carbon intensive than the EU, but that headwind will be more than offset by a massive tailwind as manufacturing now taking place in China and supply chains now beginning in China move to the United States, because the relative difference between the tariff that China would have to pay and the tariff that the US would have to pay would actually be a huge economic value. If we were to step up our own participation in the EU and now potentially UK CBAM, we could reduce the tariff headwind while also enjoying the tailwind. Is that not correct?
Yes, that's exactly right, Senator.
And then one other thing that I'd mention that is coming at us is the administration's decision, the Office of Management and Budget's decision, which I very strongly applaud, to take the social cost of carbon that is shortly to emerge from the Environmental Protection Agency's APA rulemaking process and make sure that it's applied across the board. So we've heard testimony about buying cement. Into that cement calculation would now have to fit $190 per ton social cost of carbon. I expect, Dr. Rajitsky, that you also see that as a positive influence on industrial decarbonization in America.
Certainly having some kind of mechanism to differentiate the emissions intensity of the products that the federal government is buying will be able to advantage those who are producing the more efficient product, as well as create those markets for innovators like Sublime and others to really see the potential of the market for the investments that they're making into their net zero technologies. And so it'll certainly be able to increase the amount of innovation in really being able to get to net zero in industry.
And it's a fairly elementary proposition of market economics that polluters should pay the cost of their pollution rather than socialize the cost of their pollution onto other innocent parties. Without that, the whole principle of market economics, which is the principle of price signals, is warped and degraded and doesn't work any longer. So do you believe it's consistent with traditional economic policies to have the social cost of carbon and the CBAM and other tariffs reflect the fact that there are harms from carbon emissions?
I'll say that I'm certainly not an economist, but my understanding is generally being able to price in these negative externalities where the costs are being brought on to somewhere in society and putting those in the places that are causing the actual harm and the costs does align with the idea of negative externalities in economics.
Well, you may not be an economist, but you know what negative externalities are. That's pretty good first step. I'll take it. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you.